Good morning. This morning we will cover another koan from the Gateless Gate or Mumonkan. And in this case it will be case number 40, tipping over a water vase. It goes like this. Hyakujo wished to designate a monk to open a new monastery on Mount Tai-i. He told his disciples that whoever answered a question most ably would be appointed. Placing a water vase on the ground, he asked, "Who can say what this is without calling its name?" The chief monk said, "It cannot be called a wooden shoe." Then Isan, the cooking monk, tipped over the vase with his foot and walked out. Hyakujo smiled and said, "The chief monk loses." So it was Isan the cook who became the founder of the new monastery. Mumon's comment. Isan displayed great spirit in his action, but he could not escape Hyakujo's trick. After all, he ended up giving up a light cooking job and took on a heavy one. Verse. He gave up cooking utensils and defeated the chatterbox. Though his teacher set a barrier before him, his foot will tip over everything, even the Buddha himself. As you can see in this story, there are two types of responses given to Hyakujo's question. The chief monk's response was rather verbal. You cannot call it a wooden shoe. But the cooking monk's response was more intuitive. And it was the second one, of course, that was preferred by Hyakujo. And in Zen, this is not an exception. The rational mind is often frowned upon, and a rational explanation is usually being rejected. And intuitive response of tipping over the vase with the water flowing out in front of all the bystanders, that kind of a response is much preferred. However, these recordings are called Zen Koans with an Advaita Twist, and I will today therefore provide you with some verbal explanations and analogies. And this also is found very helpful to us people who come from the West, because our Western minds are kind of used to get some rational explanations too. But just a reminder, all these koans, they relate to our true nature. Most of our lives we run around believing we are this body, or we are this thinking machine, or we are this feeling machine. But the matter we meditate on is exactly turning away from all these things, turning away from the body, and instead noticing that in which the body appears. What is that? Turning away of this thinking machine, and rather wondering what it is in which all these thoughts appear. What is that? Or turning away of all those feelings and rather recognize the aware space in which the feelings come and go. What is that? And this thing, which is not a thing, can be named in different ways. In Advaita, people like to call it awareness, or consciousness, or the ultimate subject. And in Zen, people like to talk about Buddha nature, like Buddha nature pervades the whole universe, revealing right here and now Buddha nature, or true nature sometimes. Most traditions, however, agree that this matter cannot be named, cannot be described, because this thinking mind can explain everything around it except its own, except the source from which the mind arises. As a parallel, I often use the comparison with the eye. This eye can see all the objects surrounding me except the eye itself. And even when you have a mirror in front of you, what you then see is not your eye, it's the reflection of your eye. Also to be considered is that Western religions are also not an exception. They also don't like to use the name of God. God is that one which has no name. Let me read a little poem from Daido Kokushi. He said, "There is a reality prior to heaven and earth. Indeed, it has no form, much less a name. Eyes fail to see it. It has no voice for ears to detect it. To call it mind or Buddha or even consciousness violates its nature. For it then becomes a visionary flower in the air. It is not mind nor Buddha, absolutely quiet and yet illuminating in a mysterious way." I love this visionary flower in the air in this poem. All objects you can think of, or all notions about consciousness or Buddha nature you can think of, they just are like visionary flowers in the air. But the space that contains all these visionary flowers, they cannot have a form. They cannot be named. And consider this for yourself also. Your name, what does this have in common with your presence? If your name is Michael or Mary, how much has this word Michael or word Mary to do with that person sitting in front of this computer screen or this cell phone? How much has this Michael or Mary to do with awareness, listening to this talk? Hyakujo told his pupils that whoever answered a question most ably would be appointed. Placing a water vase on the ground, he asked, "Who can say what this is without calling its name. The chief monk said, "It cannot be called a wooden shoe." Then Isan, the cooking monk, tipped over the vase with his foot and walked out. Because in a way, even this vase, we call this a vase, but a vase is also an expression of this illuminating presence. And what we see here as a vase has also nothing to do with vase itself. Just like the name Michael or Mary has nothing to do with your aware presence. So calling this a water vase is just as false as calling you there Michael or Mary, or this one, Jacques. So the chief monk's response was on the level of naming. He said it cannot be named a wooden shoe. So he said that it was not a wooden shoe, but it's still naming somehow. It's naming what it is not. So that response was not so great. However, the cooking monk's response, he refused any words at all, and yet the essence of the vase's function came through very clearly. And the inside of the vase, the water, similar to awareness, was spilled out in front of all the viewers. Maybe you'll find that difficult to understand, but with this silent and humorous tipping over gesture, he silently and discreetly conveyed that his aware presence is the same, one and the same as the vase presence. The end of the koan. Isan gave up cooking utensils and defeated the chatterbox. Though his teacher set a barrier before him, his foot will tip over everything, even the Buddha himself. Which means that Isan sees through all the objects and their outside appearance and their names, and is aware of his aware presence, which is the same as all the objects' aware presence. This story has also a lot of value in our daily lives. Would you like to be treated as an object? Would you like somebody to be calling you, "Hey, you there, Belgian, or American, or German, or whatever nationality you have"? No, you are aware presence. You don't like to be put into this small box. Or would you like, if you're a lady, that someone calls you, "Hey, lady," or even worse, "Hey, baby"? It makes you an object, and you are aware presence. You don't like to be taken like a limited object. In my case, when they call me, "Hey, bald head," I don't like it. I don't like people to call me an object. I am much more. I'm aware presence. Or if you are dealing with a pizza vendor and you say, "Hey, you, put some more cheese on my pizza," the guy doesn't like it because you treat him as a pizza vendor and he is aware presence. Same with the taxi driver. When you say, "Taxi driver, please go faster, I'm in a hurry," the taxi driver usually doesn't like it because he is aware presence. So please reflect on all these things for a few moments and see how a change in attitude toward naming objects, naming and considering things around you like objects, when you stop doing that, how big a difference that can make. Thank you very much, and see you next time.